Part 2. Background. In Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 4, Moses meets God for the first time when Moses climbs a mountain to investigate a burning bush that isn't consumed by fire. This is also where we are going to start the background for the Ten Commandments. As we continue in this story, we can see exactly the respect and reverence that Moses had for God. This is evidenced through Exodus chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. Moses was able to know that as soon as God was starting to speak through the burning bush, that this wasn't just a normal meeting between him and anyone else. Moses was told that he needed to remove his shoes, seen in verse 5, which further shows that not only was this a special meeting with God, but that it also, the very ground that he was standing on, was supposed to be holy and needed to be treated with respect. Also, Moses was showing respect to God by not daring to look at the face of God, found in verse 6. Moses wasn't the kind of man that we would describe as a born leader. He lacked some quality considered most important for leaders. In Numbers chapter 12, verse 3, describes him as meek, which means quiet, gentle, and easily imposed on, submissive. These qualities aren't to be defined as a great and powerful leader. However, God tells Moses that he is the one that will lead the Israelites out of slavery and out of the hand of Pharaoh, found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 10. Now the Pharaoh in power at this time was known for treating his slaves terribly and just bad, found in Exodus chapter 1, verse 14, also in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7, and also in verse 9. Moses was born in these hard times. The Pharaoh had made a law to kill every son that was born of the Israelites, found in Exodus chapter 1, verse 22. This was the kind of rule that Moses and the Israelites faced, yet God had heard their cries, Exodus chapter 3, verse 9. And he was going to send Moses to lead them out of Egypt, found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 10. Moses was certainly shocked and reacted kind of a why me to the request of God, found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 11. As we already talked about, Moses was this meek and quiet man, yet God had told him that he was the one that was going to lead and to save his people. Moses knew what needed to be done. However, he didn't think that he alone would have enough power to convince to follow through with God's plan. He began to ask, "What should I say so that they would believe that you sent me?" Exodus chapter 3, verse 13 through 15. The power that stands behind the name of God is so powerful. It is worded that all you need to say to the Israelites is, "I am has sent me to you." Just the words that God has sent me to you is all that was needed to convince them. Those words alone were enough to let them know that he was going to free them from their bondage. Moses explained to them that he was going to take them out of slavery that they were in, and instead lead them to a land that flowed with milk and honey. Exodus chapter 3, verses 16 through 17. This is the same description that God gave to Moses earlier, found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 8. Moses correctly assumed that Pharaoh wasn't just going to give over his workforce and free the Israelites, Exodus chapter 3, verse 19. That is why God already had a plan in place for this, found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 20. God's plan is going to show them many wonders, convincing Pharaoh that he was wrong about imprisoning God's chosen people. Exodus chapter 4 records how God was able to work through Moses to show Pharaoh all the powerful signs that were needed. Also, he got Aaron, who was a better speaker, to help him to speak to Pharaoh, found in Exodus chapter 4, verse 14. Every time that Moses and Aaron would talk with Pharaoh and show him signs and wonders from God, Pharaoh would say that he would let their people go. However, every time he instead hardened his heart. We can see this starting in Exodus chapter 7. This pattern of Moses and Aaron talking to Pharaoh and him hardening his heart is what started the 10 plagues of Egypt. Those go from Exodus chapter 7, verse 14, all the way to Exodus chapter 12, verse 30. After all those plagues are complete, God called for Moses and Aaron to take the people and to lead them away to the promised land. Exodus chapter 12, verse 31 and 32. Through all these powerful signs and wonders that God displayed through Moses, God wanted his people to remember this great newfound freedom and how it came to pass. Exodus chapter 13, verse 3. God was with his people even when they were in bondage. They just couldn't see it. Now, though that they were free, he was traveling with them to not only show that he was with them, but also to guide them on their journey in Exodus chapter 13, verses 21 and 22. There are plenty of more examples of God being with them on their journey here. We see it crossing the Red Sea, Exodus chapter 14, verses 16 through 29, making bitter water sweet, found in Exodus chapter 15, verses 22 through 25. Bread from heaven, found in Exodus chapter 16, verses 3 and 4. Water from the rock, Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 through 6. When Israel fights Amalek, Exodus chapter 17, verses 8 through 11. There was a lot of things that God did for his people to get them out of bondage and in their travels after that too, in order to please and to make sure that they made it to the promised land. Eventually they made it to Mount Sinai. At this point, God was going to speak to the Israelites, but before that was going to happen, he wanted to get the people ready for this meeting. However, when everything was ready and put in place to happen, the people of God were too scared to go through with this. So instead, God told them to go away, and he instead just talked to Moses. Exodus chapter 19, verses 23 through 24. All this leads up to God speaking and talking to Moses and giving him the 10 Commandments, the focus on this study.